From the campus of the University of Nebraska at Omaha. Consider This, a program of issues and information behind today's news.
Later today, I plan to use my authority under City Code Chapter 12, Sections 1, 21, 23, and 24 to order a mask mandate for the city of Omaha.
Dr. Hughes does not have the authority to be able to do a mask mandate like that. The Attorney General has filed suit to stop this mask mandate, and as you know, I am against mask mandates in general.
Hi everyone, I'm Kathy Wyatt. Welcome to the 25th season and this week's edition of Consider This. Our topic, COVID-19 legal issues. Joining us to talk more about it is Jason Grams. Jason is a partner of Lamson, Dugan, and Murray. He is also the president-elect for the Nebraska State Bar Association. Thank you so much for being here today and welcome.
Thank you for having me, Kathy.
I want to start, Jason, pre-COVID-19, right? What types of public health orders were issued and why?
Around the country?
Sure.
I mean, public health orders have predated the United States. The first were in the 1600s with the colonists and their kind of environment where they could catch diseases, and there were things like plague and cholera and smallpox, and the British Parliament actually authorized health officials in the colonies to quarantine people and to take them out of circulation. So it has a long history.
Okay, and typically who protested those, Jason?
I don't know that there was a lot of protest. I think the population at the time realized the need to combat those diseases, and they didn't want to get sick. So people generally complied. And again, at the time, the tools were different, right? So it was mostly quarantine. It was, we didn't have modern vaccines or things like that at the time, but they would, if you were in a house with somebody who had tuberculosis, they'd lock you in there and tell you to stay there until they had cleared you to go back out in the public. And that's kind of continued throughout history to the present day. I think the most recent example in Nebraska anyway was during the swine flu epidemic. There were not orders per se issued, but guidance to businesses on what to do with patients that might have the swine flu. And so it has a long history and long lineage.
Okay, role of state government.
Role of state government. The states and localities have always been primarily responsible for protecting their citizens. So public health orders are thought of as a part of the police powers, which states have always had, kind of as an inherent power, which local officials have. And it makes a lot of sense. They're dealing with situations that arise kind of one at a time, and they have to make the best judgment they can with the information they have to try to protect the public from whatever the disease might be. And this has come up with cholera, smallpox, and typhoid, and polio. Tuberculosis is kind of an ongoing one. There are still folks that get TB and they get quarantined.
Okay.
So
COVID-19 comes down the pike. Did it seem like we started off the way we should have here in terms of what we're talking about today?
Started off the way we should have. I mean, I think we'd all rather not have had COVID-19 come down the pike. Did we, as a public, react the way we should have? I mean, I think that's a debatable issue. I think, generally speaking, our public health officials did a good job. They took in information and made the best decisions they had with the information they had.
Okay, and as time went on though, we saw things escalate. Not really surprising, it did go on, right? But talk about how the situation in terms of public health and state government, talk about how that escalated.
how the situation escalated. I think we had a disease that was more communicable than we had experienced in the past that affected more people. I think the government took measures to address those things. If you'd like to talk about the history of mask mandates in Omaha, for example, which is where I think we're going with this, my understanding is that shortly after the pandemic hit, Dr. Poor, who at the time was the Douglas County Health Director, looked at the situation and considered doing a mask mandate, and there was uncertain guidance on whether she legally had the authority to do that, and she declined to do that, and instead the Omaha City Council enacted the first mask mandate, which was renewed a number of times. And they did that by ordinance and created a city law related to the COVID-19 response. Later, Dr. Poor had retired, and my understanding is Dr. Hughes considered a mask mandate in the second year, 2021, and proposed a mask mandate to the state Department of Health and Human Services, and the state denied her issuing that mask mandate. And so one was not issued during that time period. There was, going back to when Dr. Poor was in charge, still this question about whether the director had the authority to unilaterally issue a mask mandate without going to the State Department. And so with this most recent one, Dr. Hugh concluded that she should issue the mandate, and she did issue it under that other authority.
Okay. City charter, that's where we're going with all of this. Before we get into this discussion any further, talk about what city charter is, or what it means, Jason.
So everything we do in the law, our authority to do it derives from the Constitution. The Constitution of the United States has states, Nebraska has a constitution, and all the authorities for the state government flow from that Nebraska Constitution. So one of the things that the Constitution allows is the creation of cities and towns and villages. The charter of a city like Omaha is its kind of founding document, its constitution. And its code and laws, they're called ordinances, have to comply with that charter, and that charter is enacted under authority from the Nebraska Constitution. So that's what a charter is. A charter is kind of the founding document of the city.
Okay, so she issues this mandate. Now the state attorney general comes in and says, no, you can't do that under what you're suggesting you did, the city charter. So she's saying, I had the right to do it under this city charter. The attorney general comes in and says, no.
So there's two sources of law here, and this is where it gets a little bit confusing. Dr. Poor issued the mandate under a city ordinance passed by the City of Omaha City Council, I believe in 1980. And I didn't want to bring notes, but I'm going to read it to you here.
Please do.
And it says, this is section 1224, it shall be the duty of the health director, whenever in his judgment the city is afflicted or threatened with an epidemic of contagious or infectious disease, to issue or cause to be issued such orders, regulations, and instructions as may, again in his judgment, be deemed effective for the prevention, removal, or limiting of such disease. So I think Dr. Hughes looks at this, it's the law of Omaha, and says, I'm the health director. It's my duty, not my, I might, I may, but I shall, if I think the cities afflicted with an epidemic that all issue the necessary regulations that I think are necessary in my judgment. And so she issued the mask mandate citing to this section of the Omaha City Code. And I think that's the authority she's accessing. And so that's Dr. Hughes' side of the matter. The Attorney General, do you want me to go there, or do you have another?
No, please, I was going to follow up with, okay,
Okay.
so step in the Attorney General here, who's saying he's going to sue, right?
Right, well, he has sued.
Take the ball.
He has sued.
Okay.
So this source of authority that she cited is the city's authority to enact that. And I would suggest also that nobody's really debating that the city has authority to have a mask mandate. In the lawsuit, there's no questioning of the city council's making that determination and ordinance back in 2020. The question is whether she can use this kind of general authority, and you can debate how general that actually is, to issue this mask mandate, and whether she's the one to do it. Because there's a statute from the state legislature, okay, which provides authority to the county health director, right, to, under the supervision of the county board, to make similar orders and issues with the consent and approval of the Department of Health and Human Services. And that's the state government down in Lincoln, okay?
Okay.
So, Dr. Hughes didn't ask for approval from DHHS down in Lincoln. We don't know why, but one suspects it's because they denied it the last time around, right?
Okay.
So there's this source of authority for the county health director to act under that statute, the Nebraska statute, if the state approves, okay? The state did not approve, so instead, and she didn't ask the state to approve, in fairness, so instead she operates under the city ordinance, okay?
Okay.
So what's the question there? I mean, there's two sources of authority to issue these orders, and she didn't do one and did do the other. So what's the problem? Well, Dr. Hughes is the Douglas County health director. This is an Omaha city ordinance. The city ordinance authorizes the health director to issue, insist that they issue orders in situations where they deem it's warranted. And then in the definition sections, and this gets kind of technical, but it defines the health director, theoretically the city health director, as being the county health director. So we have a person here who's wearing two hats, and she's concluded that the law of the city required her to act, and she acted. And so the lawsuit is about the, and I'm sorry, his name, Dr. Anthone is the chief medical officer of the Department of Health and Human Services. So he has filed, the lawsuit's being filed on his behalf because he was denied the right to approve or deny the mandate that he would have had if it was being offered to him by the county board and the county health director. So that's what the lawsuit is really about. It's less about, behind the scenes, it's about, should we have a mask mandate? But the technical legal issue is not, should we have a mask mandate? It's who has the authority to issue the mask mandate, and was this authority from the city sufficient? And Dr. Hughes thinks it is sufficient, and it appears that the city does as well, or the city attorney's office does as well. The state believes that it's not because of several legal theories, one of which is that the authority granted to the county kind of supersedes or preempts the authority granted to the city. And that gets into a number of technical legal issues. And, you know, it's these kinds of things that arise in life that you can't always plan for, and that we have judges and courts for. And so that's what's taking place in the lawsuit. And then there are interveners who are some of the city council members, a minority of them, who feel like they should have had the authority since they issued the mask mandate in 2020, that their act of doing that and then not renewing it kind of preempts this more general authority that the health director has.
I think viewers may be wondering, when we talk about this, and we can all agree that, yeah, there is a law out there for a reason. We had numbers of cases rising dramatically. So my follow-up to you, and maybe you're not the best person to ask, but if not her, then who? Because this was escalating, and it didn't seem as though people were in authority, were stepping up. Obviously, the medical professionals had their opinions, and rightly so. It's a medical issue. But if not her, who would have been able to do it, and would they have done it? My follow-up there is, for these people who are saying she didn't have the authority, again, viewers may be wanting to know, well, what's their idea then, right? So I'm just asking, you're, again, tell me if you're not the right person, but I think those are the follow-ups that people would have.
I'm not the right person, but I can give
Thoughts,
you some.
yes.
Give you some comments.
Thank
on
you.
it.
Thank you.
These are regulations, and I think the governor and the state would say we're the right people, and Dr. Hughes would say I'm the only person, and their failure to act is what has caused me to act. That's not an issue I really can comment on. That's a political question, right? But you know, you might ask, why would the government choose not to have a mask mandate? And Dr. Hughes chooses to have a mask mandate. She thinks it's necessary. This other doctor here doesn't. Why is that? And I think it's the evaluation of risk and reward, and they just see the matter differently. There are a large group of Nebraskans who think we should be wearing masks and taking every precaution to defeat the virus. And there's a large group of Nebraskans that think it's not worth it, and it's not working anyway. And you know, what's the risk versus reward of the situation? I can tell you it would probably be that we would save a lot of lives if we had a 35-mile-an-hour speed limit between Lincoln and Omaha. And people wouldn't die in car accidents as often. But society, through its elected representatives, have decided that there's a certain number of deaths that can occur to have the convenience of being able to make that trip more quickly. Is there a right answer to that question? It depends on your perspective. If all human life is precious and we could save even one life if we went 5 miles an hour, then you know, that person is going to think that's what we should do. I think probably in the case of the speed limit, the majority, and if driving from Lincoln to Omaha is any indication, the vast majority of people would prefer to take that risk for themselves and for others and go faster. So to kind of bring that together here, the real question for the politicians is wearing the mask worth it? Is this inconvenience, and it's a small one, worth the cost of some death and some sickness? And there are going to be not unreasonable positions on both sides of that. I happen to have my personal view of it, but it is, you know, we've set up government and set up structures to make decisions about how we're going to live, and those policies are executed through our representatives. And some of the representatives here, the City Council of Omaha, Some of them are the governor and the legislature of Nebraska. And those are the people we've chosen to kind of make these decisions. And so the lawsuit's not really about what should we do. It's about who gets to decide those questions. And they just have a fundamental disagreement about it. I think that's responsive.
Well, and I think, as you talk about it, you're absolutely right. We do elect these officials, right? But we've heard enough, especially in this situation, from the politicians. And I guess, and again, speaking from the perspective of folks with whom I visited, why is the decision in the hands of the people who don't have the medical background when the people who have the medical background are citing facts, citing research, citing a lot of things to try to help, in this case, stop the spread of Omicron, right? So I think, and I'm trying to be objective too here, so if we take a few steps back and we say, okay, the final authority lies here,
Right.
if in a situation like a pandemic, right, it's medically based, I think the confusion comes with, back to Dr. Hughes, let's go full circle, she has the background, she's taking the initiative to say, I believe that by doing this, we can help reduce the spread, but she's getting this from perceived leaders, they are leaders, but they don't have necessarily the background that she has to base her decision. Does that make sense?
It does. But
Okay.
keep in mind the plaintiff in this case is the chief medical officer of DHHS, presumably a doctor with a background sufficient to get him into that position. That person's running an agency and advising the governor as to, what his best advice is on the subject. And so it's not like we have just all one way of seeing things. Now, it may be that the mountain of medical professionals comes down on one side of this or the other side. But still, it's a political question to grant that authority to these people. So, for example, Dr. Hughes acted under a piece of legislation, this 1224 ordinance, that was enacted by the Omaha City Council. Politicians, not doctors, that gave her the authority, right? As the Douglas County Health Director, she has authority given to her by the legislature. Politicians, not doctors. So it's a political question who's going to make those decisions. And it's one that historically has been given to the medical professionals. Now, what we've got going on with COVID, and this is not just a Nebraska thing, it's all over the country. We have states, cities, counties, all over that are either taking away or cutting back those authorities from medical professionals because they don't like the advice, right? So is that the right thing to do? Personally, I don't think so. It is what, in a lot of cases, they've chosen to do. My understanding is that in Iowa, you can't make a student wear a mask at public school, right? Because of a state statute passed by the Iowa politicians, not the doctors, right? And you could go state after state. There's Idaho and North Dakota and all of the, I think it's like 17 or 18 states that have radically dialed back the authority of the health directors to implement some of these requirements. Is that because they're not possible to do? No, I think it's very clear in the law that, and this goes all the way back to the 1600s I was talking about at the beginning, there's a Supreme Court case, 1905, I think it's the Jacobson case, which there was an outbreak of smallpox in Boston, and the local health authorities said, we're going to force you all to get vaccinated. And so they had a mandatory vaccination for smallpox at the time. That went all the way up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said fine. And so there's authority to do these things. It's just a question of who makes, in this case, who makes the decision whether or not to do them. And that's what the genesis of the lawsuit is.
Okay, I want to go one more here. So I want to go back to the governor, who is opposed to mandates per the opening video, right?
Sure.
Proven that they'll help reduce the spread, but he's opposed to those, and yet recently issued a health directive to Nebraska Medicine saying you're going to have to limit the number of elective surgeries. Again, trying to make logic out of all of this. Don't want to have the mandate for the masks, which again proven to help reduce the spread. I'm going to limit. I want to limit the number of elective surgeries. So we have like 2 minutes. Make sense of that for me, Jason.
So if you want to know why the governor does what the governor does, you should probably ask the governor. I will say that for me, my understanding, and I was only from media reports, I don't know anything about this at all, is that UNMC declared a staffing emergency, essentially. And on the same day, the governor issued this order saying no elective surgeries. Now, that kind of suggests to me that they were talking to each other, and one thing was a reaction to another. But I just don't know why.
Yeah.
I do know that it sounds like there could have been a disagreement about who should have the power to make those kinds of decisions, similar to what's going on
Right.
With Dr. Hughes. And you said we have 2 minutes. We probably have one now.
We have 30 seconds. Final thoughts, Jason. Wrap it all up for us. In a
I will
nice
wrap it all
package.
up for us. Setting this question to the side, we have lost 850,000 Americans to the coronavirus since it started. And we lost 405,000 Americans in World War II. We lost 50,000 Americans in Vietnam. And I think with some perspective, looking back, for example, on Vietnam, we know now that it was the wrong thing to do to call those veterans baby killers when they came back home. And it's similarly the wrong thing to do to look at healthcare professionals and people that are on the front lines here. They are our frontline soldiers fighting this disease, and criticizing them for the decisions that they're making to try and get this right. And so I think we all just need to look at the situation and support our healthcare workers.
You bet. Jason Graham's talking to us today about COVID-19 legal issues. Thank you for sharing your time and expertise. And thank you all for watching.
Consider This is an issues and information program produced by UNO Television. More information and program archives can be found at nebraskapublicmedia.org/considerthis. If you'd like to share your comments about this program, call UNO Television at 402-554-2516 during regular business hours, or send an email to cwyatt@unomaha.edu.
Hi everyone, I'm Kathy Wyatt. Welcome to the first edition, the 5th edition, 9th edition, the 13th edition of a special weekly series on Consider This, COVID-19.
There's thousands of small businesses out there that frankly can't do business.
Our anticipation and our hope was that we would just be closed for 2 weeks.
In Nebraska, we lost an estimated $88 million in sales and more than 24,000 jobs.
Probably the last time that happened was 1918 during the Spanish flu.
Different facilities have adapted better or worse to this.
When the floods hit, you could go help your neighbor, and you could go to work side by side with them. Today, we can't do those things.
I think we've always had good teamwork, but now we know we need it.
If we cannot create immunity in between 60 and 70% of the population, we will never fully reopen.
This has been stressful for everybody.
This virus is not going to go away, not in any time soon.